All right, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, we are diving into our opening discussion of logic and reasoning. And we are going to be talking about, first and foremost, of what we call conditional statements. So within our entire conditional statements section, the goal will be able to define what conditional statements are and be able to write all four of the different types. But for our purposes for today, in this video, we are going to be looking specifically at number one here. We're going to be looking on into the definition of conditional statements. We're going to start there. We're going to make sure that we know all the symbolism for conditional statements. And then after we get through our negation, we're going to look into the four different types of converse, inverse, contrapositive, and the original. But let's start off first and foremost with identifying what a conditional statement is. Remember, this is all about conditional statements, and it's all about logic and reasoning and understanding where the actual, I would put common sense kind of comes from with a lot of things, but also where does the evidence come from when you're backing yourself up based on an argument. And so in our first definition, a conditional statement is simply a statement that can be written in if-then form. It's a causation statement. If this occurs, then something else will happen because of it. Now, we're not saying that all conditional statements are true, all right, but it's a causal statement. If something happens, then something will result in terms or in reaction to it in the end. And so if we look at the parts of a conditional statement, it's broken down to two parts. And you may recognize this from your chemistry or from your science classes, that the if portion is called your hypothesis. Okay, that's the if portion. So if blank, blank, blank happens, then it will recur into something else. We call that if the hypothesis side of things, and it's symbolized with our letter P. It is symbolized with our letter P. The second part of a conditional statement is the conclusion, or the then portion of the conditional statement. And so we finish off saying if P, then Q. So if P, the hypothesis, then Q, the conclusion, occurs in return. So we write that if P, then Q. Symbolically, that is written P arrow Q. So P arrow Q right down in here, that represents if P, then Q happens. If P, then Q happens. That is our conditional symbolism there. So let's take a look at a couple examples. So we want to go ahead and identify the hypothesis in red and the blue with our conclusion, and then rewrite it as a conditional statement. So if we have something happen, all right, so if something happens, so what happens is it's a bird, right? So first and foremost, okay, so what happens here is that if there is a bird, right? Bird is our hypothesis. So if you are a bird, all right, and then the cause or the conclusion is you will have feathers because you are a bird. So we rewrite that as if an animal is a bird, then it has feathers, right? So if an animal is a bird, then it has feathers. What about for our next one? Our next one says, you are in Texas if you are in Houston. Now be careful on this one. The hypothesis, the original part of our conditional statement is if you find yourself in Texas, or excuse me, in Houston, if you find yourself in Houston. So if you find yourself in Houston in here, then what happens because you are in Houston? Well, then you are in Texas. So if you are in Houston, then you are in Texas, right? So that is an example of how do we identify our hypothesis and our conclusion in a conditional statement format. Let's look at a couple other symbolism here. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is the negation. The negation of a statement is the opposite of the original statement. So if you see the negation, that means the opposite of the original statement. So in symbolism, we use this kind of little squiggly over here. This little squiggly is our negation symbol, and it's red, not P. So it's not squiggle P, it's not P. So we don't say opposite of P, we say not P for negation. So let's take a look here what we're talking about when we're dealing with negation specifically. So it wants us to write the negation of each statement. So for part A, the ball is red. Well, the negation would be the ball is not red. There's your negation. In part B, we would say the cat is not black. Please do not say the cat is not black. So the cat is black. There's the opposite. There's the negation to our statement. So that's going to wrap up this video. We've defined what a conditional statement is. We have defined the symbolism for conditional statements and the parts as well. In our next video, we will look into the different types of conditional